I still remember the first time I felt something was off. It was one of those evenings when you come home tired, looking forward to a quiet night with your loved one. I walked through the front door, expecting the usual greeting from my wife, Emma. But that day, her reaction was different, guarded, almost distant. "Hey, Jason," she said, her voice slightly strained as she glanced up from her phone. "You're home early." I shrugged it off at first, thinking maybe she was just having a rough day. "Yeah, finished work earlier than expected. Thought we could have dinner together." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Sure, that sounds nice." As we sat down to eat, I noticed she kept her phone close, face down on the table. I had never paid much attention to her habits with her phone, but something about the way she guarded it that night stuck with me. I tried to shake it off, but the seed of doubt was planted. A few days later, I was getting ready for bed when I saw her phone lighting up on her side of the bed. Out of habit, I glanced over to see the screen, but she quickly grabbed it before I could read the message. "Who was that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated, her smile a little too quick. "Oh, just a friend from work. No one important." "Must be someone important if they're texting you this late," I teased, though my curiosity was piqued. Emma shrugged, her tone light. "It's just Brittany, asking about some project stuff. Don't worry about it." But I couldn't help but worry. Something didn't add up. Emma had always been open with me, her phone left lying around, unlocked. Now it seemed like she was hiding something. A few weeks passed and my unease grew. Emma became more secretive, always taking her phone with her, even to the bathroom. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid, but a part of me knew there was more to it. Then one morning, while she was in the shower, I saw her phone on the kitchen counter, unlocked. I hesitated, my heart pounding. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but the nagging feeling inside me pushed me to look. I picked up her phone and scrolled through her messages. There were several texts from a contact saved under Alicia. The messages were casual at first, work-related, harmless. But then I noticed something odd. The tone of the conversation shifted, becoming more personal, more flirtatious. My stomach tightened as I read through the thread. "Missed seeing you today," one message said. "Me too. Can't wait for our next meeting," was the reply. I felt my blood run cold. I scrolled further up, my hands shaking. There were photos, nothing explicit, but definitely suggestive. Pictures of a woman I didn't recognize, posing in what looked like Emma's favorite cafe, the one she always said she went to alone. I couldn't read anymore. I put the phone down, my mind racing. Who was this Alicia? And why was Emma talking to her like this? My mind went to dark places, imagining scenarios I didn't want to consider. That night I confronted her. "Emma, who's Alicia?" I asked as calmly as I could, though my heart was pounding in my chest. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, surprised. "What? Why do you ask?" "I saw some messages on your phone from someone named Alicia. They didn't seem like messages from a friend." Her face flushed, and she quickly looked away. "Jason, you had no right to go through my phone." I felt a surge of frustration. "I wouldn't have if I didn't feel like you were hiding something from me," she sighed, rubbing her temples. She's just a friend, Jason. Someone I met through work. She's been having a tough time, and I've been trying to help her out." "Help her out?" I scoffed. "It didn't seem like that from the messages I read. Are you seeing her, Emma?" She didn't answer immediately, and in that moment, I felt my world crumbling. The silence spoke louder than words. Finally, she looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Jason, I swear, it's not what you think. I haven't done anything with her. She's just been flirting with me, and I guess I didn't stop it. But I promise, nothing physical has happened." I wanted to believe her, but the doubt was already there, festering. "Why didn't you tell me about her before?" She shook her head, wiping her eyes. "I don't know. I guess I didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't want to worry you." "Well, I am worried," I said, my voice trembling. "And now, I don't know what to believe." We spent the rest of the night in silence, each lost in our thoughts. Emma tried to reach out, to explain, but I couldn't listen. All I could think about was that one message, "Can't wait for our next meeting." What did that mean? What had my wife been hiding from me? The next few days were a blur. Emma tried to act normal, but I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she avoided looking at me directly. I wanted to confront her again, to demand answers, but a part of me was too afraid of what I might hear. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, she changed. Emma became more attentive, more affectionate, as if trying to make up for something. But every touch, every smile felt hollow, forced. I could feel the distance growing between us, a chasm of secrets and unspoken words. I decided to take matters into my own hands. If she wouldn't tell me the truth, I would find out myself. The tension in our house grew thicker with each passing day. I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Emma's behavior became even more suspicious, more guarded, more secretive. She started making excuses to leave the house at odd hours, claiming she needed to go to the store or meet a friend from work. But her explanations were vague, and my suspicions grew stronger. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't live with the uncertainty anymore, with the gnawing doubt that kept me awake at night. I decided to take matters into my own hands. It wasn't an easy decision, but I needed to know the truth, even if it tore my world apart. One Friday evening, I waited until Emma went to bed, then quietly slipped out of the house. I drove across town to meet a private investigator I had contacted earlier that day. His name was Jack Dawson, a seasoned professional known for his discretion and thoroughness. I found him in a dimly lit diner, a place where no one would recognize me. Jack was a middle-aged man with a gruff demeanor and a piercing gaze. He listened intently as I laid out my suspicions, nodding occasionally but saying little. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me for a moment. "So you think your wife is having an affair?" he said bluntly, his eyes never leaving mine. I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, but I need to be sure. I need proof before I confront her." Jack took a deep breath and nodded. "All right, I'll take the case. But you should know, this isn't going to be easy. Whatever I find, it might not be what you want to hear." I sighed, feeling the weight of his words. "I understand. I need to know the truth." Jack nodded again, then pulled out a notepad. "Tell me everything you can about her schedule, her habits, any recent changes in behavior. The more details, the better." I spent the next half hour recounting everything I had noticed: the late-night texts, the secretive phone calls, the unexplained absences. Jack took notes, his expression focused and serious. When I finished, he closed his notepad and stood up. "I'll start right away," he said. "I'll keep you updated on anything I find." I thanked him and watched as he left the diner, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. I was taking a step toward the truth, but I knew that whatever Jack uncovered could shatter my life forever. The next few days were agonizing. I tried to act normal around Emma, but it was difficult. Every time she looked at me, I wondered if she was thinking about Alicia. Every time she left the house, I wondered if she was meeting her. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, unable to escape the images playing in my mind. Then one afternoon, I received a call from Jack. "Jason, I've got some news," he said, his voice calm but serious. "I think you need to see this." We arranged to meet at his office, a small, nondescript building in a quiet part of town. When I arrived, Jack greeted me with a nod and led me to his desk. He handed me a folder filled with photographs. "These were taken over the past few days," he explained. "I followed Emma to several places, and I think you'll find the contents revealing." I opened the folder with trembling hands. The first few photos showed Emma at the cafe, the same one where I had seen her with Alicia before. They were sitting close, talking, laughing, their hands occasionally brushing against each other's. My stomach twisted into knots as I flipped through the images. Then, the photos changed. There were pictures of them at a park, sitting on a bench, their bodies angled toward each other, heads close. Another showed them in front of a bar, a dimly lit place on the edge of town. But the last set of photos hit me the hardest. They were standing outside a small hotel, Alicia's hand on Emma's arm, a look of intimacy between them that left no room for doubt. I felt my heart break all over again. I had hoped, prayed, that maybe it was just a misunderstanding, that maybe I was wrong, but now I had proof. My wife was having an affair, and she had been lying to me all along. Jack watched me silently, giving me time to process everything. I did some digging on Alicia, he said finally. She's not just some random woman. She works with Emma. Been at the firm for about a year. From what I've gathered, they got close pretty quickly. Too close. I nodded, unable to find my voice. My eyes were glued to the photos, each one a dagger to my heart. What do I do now? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. Jack shrugged, his expression sympathetic. That's up to you, Jason. You could confront her with what you know, see how she reacts. Or you could wait, see if she comes clean on her own. But whatever you decide, just know that you have options. You don't have to make any decisions today. I nodded again, feeling numb. I thanked Jack and left his office, the folder clutched tightly in my hands. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with 1,000 thoughts and none at all. When I walked through the door, the house felt different, colder, emptier. Emma was in the kitchen, humming softly to herself as she prepared dinner. She looked up when I entered, her face lighting up with a smile. "Hey, you're home early," she said cheerfully. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile, nodding. "Yeah, just had a light day at work." She continued cooking, chatting away about her day, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I watched her, feeling a mix of love, anger, and betrayal. How could she stand there acting like everything was normal? How could she look at me and smile after what she had done? We ate dinner in silence, the tension between us almost unbearable. I could see Emma glancing at me, sensing something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. Not yet. I needed time to think, to decide how I wanted to handle this. That night as we lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing those pictures in my mind, the way Emma looked at Alicia, the way they touched. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I was too afraid of what she might say. What if she admitted it? What if she told me she wanted to leave me for Alicia? I didn't know if I could handle that. The next morning, I decided I needed more time. I needed to think, to figure out what I wanted to do. But I couldn't keep living in this limbo, caught between suspicion and denial. I needed to know the truth, and I needed to hear it from Emma herself. Later that day, I waited until she came home from work. She walked in, her face bright and cheerful as usual. "Hey, Jason," she said, setting down her bag. "How was your day?" I didn't answer right away, just stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. "Emma, we need to talk." She looked at me, her smile fading. "About what?" "About Alicia," I said, my voice steady. "I know about the two of you. I know you've been seeing each other outside of work." Her face went pale and she took a step back, her eyes wide with fear. "Jason, I can explain." "Can you?" I asked, my voice rising. "Because I've seen the photos, Emma. I know what's going on. How long has this been happening? How long have you been lying to me?" She didn't answer immediately, tears welling up in her eyes. "Jason, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I didn't know how to tell you." I felt a surge of anger. "So you just decided not to? You thought it was better to lie? To sneak around behind my back?" She shook her head, her tears falling freely now. I was confused, okay. I didn't know what I wanted. Alicia, she's different. She makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in a long time. "And I don't," I shot back, my voice filled with pain. She hesitated, then looked away. "Jason, it's not about you. It's about me. I don't even know who I am anymore." I stared at her, the woman I had loved for so many years, now a stranger. "So what happens now?" I asked quietly. "Are you leaving me for her?" Emma looked up, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I don't know, Jason. I don't know what I want. All I know is that I need to figure it out. I need some time." I felt my heart break all over again. "Time?" I repeated. "How much time, Emma? How long do I have to wait while you decide if our marriage is worth saving?" She didn't answer, just turned away, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I watched her, feeling a mix of anger, pain, and a deep, aching sadness. I wanted to comfort her, to hold her, but I couldn't bring myself to move. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her alone with her thoughts. I didn't know what to do, where to go. I just knew that everything I thought I knew about my life was unraveling, and I was powerless to stop it. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Emma and I existed in a tense silence, each of us lost in our thoughts, unsure of what to say or do. Every time I looked at her, I saw the woman I loved and the stranger she had become. I wanted to reach out to her, to find some way to bridge the growing chasm between us, but I didn't know how. Emma seemed just as lost. She spent most of her time at home in a daze, avoiding eye contact, avoiding conversation. She stopped going out late, stopped taking mysterious calls in the other room, but her presence felt like a ghost. There, but not truly with me. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. The silence was suffocating, and I needed answers. I needed to know what she was thinking, what she wanted. I found her sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. The sound was on, but I could tell she wasn't watching it. She was a million miles away. "Emma," I said, standing in the doorway, "we need to talk." She looked up, startled, as if she had forgotten I was even there. Her eyes were red and puffy, and I could see the toll this was taking on her as well. "Jason?" "I don't know what to say," she whispered. I walked over and sat down across from her, trying to keep my voice calm. "I need to know where we stand, Emma. I need to know what you want." She looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously in her lap. "I don't know," she said softly. "I don't know what I want. I'm so confused." "Do you love her?" I asked, the question burning in my mind since the moment I saw those photos. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I think so. I don't know. It's different. It's not like us." Her words cut through me like a knife. "So what does that mean for us?" I pressed. "Are you planning to leave me? Are you planning to stay?" Tears welled up in her eyes again, and she shook her head. "Jason, I don't want to hurt you. I never wanted any of this to happen." "But it did happen," I said, my voice cracking, "and now we have to deal with it. You can't just avoid it forever." She wiped her eyes, looking exhausted. "I need time, Jason. I need time to figure things out." "Time," I repeated, feeling a wave of frustration. "You keep saying you need time. But how much time, Emma? How long do I have to wait while you decide if you want to be with me or with her?" She didn't answer, just looked away, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I could see the pain in her eyes, the guilt, the confusion. But it wasn't enough. I needed more than just her regret. I needed a decision. I stood up, feeling a surge of anger and determination. "I can't do this anymore, Emma. I can't keep living in limbo, wondering if today's the day you decide to leave me. I need to know where we stand." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Jason, please." "No," I interrupted, my voice firm. "You need to make a choice. You need to decide what you want, because I can't keep doing this." I walked out of the room, leaving her alone with her thoughts once again. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed to get out of the house to clear my head. I grabbed my keys and headed out, the cool night air hitting my face as I stepped outside. I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, my mind racing with thoughts of Emma, of Alicia, of everything that had happened. I kept replaying our conversation in my head, wondering if I could have said something different, done something different to change the outcome. But deep down, I knew that this was beyond my control. Emma had to make her own decision, and I had to be prepared for whatever that decision might be. After a while, I found myself at a familiar spot, a small park where Emma and I used to go when we first started dating. It was a quiet place, tucked away from the main road, with a small pond in the center. I parked the car and walked over to a bench near the water, sitting down and staring out at the reflection of the moon on the surface. I thought about the early days of our relationship, how easy everything seemed back then. We were young, carefree, full of hope and dreams for the future. We talked about everything, shared everything. I never imagined we would end up here, with this chasm between us, filled with secrets and lies. As I sat there lost in thought, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a message from Emma. "Can we talk?" I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. Maybe she had made a decision. Maybe this was the moment we could finally start to move forward, one way or another. I texted back, "I'll be home soon." I drove back to the house, my heart pounding with anticipation. When I walked in, Emma was standing in the hallway, her face pale but determined. She looked like she had been crying, but there was a new resolve in her eyes. Jason, she began, her voice shaky but clear, I've been thinking about what you said, about making a choice. I nodded, my throat tight. And? She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. I want to try to fix this. I want to stay. I want to work on our marriage. I felt a surge of relief mixed with a cautious optimism. Are you sure? I asked, needing to hear the conviction in her voice. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Yes, I'm sure. I know I've hurt you, and I know it's going to take time to rebuild the trust, but I want to try. I love you, Jason. I don't want to lose what we have. I took a step forward, reaching for her hand. Emma, I want to believe you. I want to believe that we can get through this, but it's not going to be easy. She squeezed my hand, her grip firm. I know, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'll cut off contact with Alicia. I'll go to therapy, whatever it takes to make this right. I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. Okay, I said softly. Let's try. We stood there for a moment, holding on to each other as if afraid to let go. It was a small step, but it was a start. We were both scared, both unsure of what the future held, but we were willing to try. And for now, that was enough. But in the back of my mind, the doubt lingered. Would it really be enough to save us? Only time would tell. The days that followed our decision to try again were fraught with tension and uncertainty. Emma and I tiptoed around each other, trying to avoid the minefield of unresolved feelings and lingering doubts. It was like learning to live together all over again, but this time with the heavy baggage of betrayal hanging over us. True to her word, Emma cut off all contact with Alicia. She deleted her number, unfollowed her on social media, and even transferred to a different department at work to avoid any chance of crossing paths. She said it was for the best, that she needed to distance herself from the temptation and focus on us. I wanted to believe her, to see her actions as a sign of commitment to repairing our marriage. But a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that it was too little, too late. Emma suggested we go to couples therapy, and though I was hesitant at first, I agreed. We found a therapist who specialized in relationships, a woman named Dr. Harper. She was in her late 40s, with a calm demeanor and a soothing voice that made you feel like you could tell her anything. Our first session was awkward, to say the least. Emma and I sat on opposite ends of the couch, avoiding each other's eyes. Dr. Harper began by asking us to talk about what brought us to therapy. Emma hesitated, then took a deep breath. I made a mistake, she said softly. I hurt Jason, and I'm here because I want to fix things. I want to make things right. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, the guilt etched on her face, but I wasn't ready to let her off the hook so easily. It wasn't just a mistake, Emma, I interjected, my voice harsher than I intended. It was a choice you made, again and again. Emma flinched, tears welling up in her eyes. Dr. Harper raised a hand gently. This is a safe space for both of you, she said calmly. It's okay to express how you feel, Jason, but we also need to focus on how to move forward. I nodded, taking a deep breath. I just don't understand why, I said, my voice breaking. Why did you feel the need to seek something outside of our marriage? Emma wiped her eyes, looking down at her hands. I don't know, she whispered. I was confused. I felt disconnected from myself, from you. Alicia, she made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. I'm not saying it was right, but that's how I felt. Her words stung, but I tried to focus on what Dr. Harper had said about moving forward. I want to work on this, I said, my voice steadying, but I need to know that you're fully committed to fixing what's broken. I need to trust you again, and that's going to take time. Emma nodded, her eyes filled with resolve. I understand, Jason. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I love you, and I want to make this right. Dr. Harper gave us some exercises to work on at home. Communication techniques, ways to rebuild trust. It felt strange, almost clinical, but I knew it was necessary. We needed to rebuild the foundation of our relationship brick by brick if we were going to survive this. The first few weeks were hard. Every time Emma's phone buzzed, I felt a jolt of panic, wondering if it was Alicia or someone else. I tried to push those thoughts away, to remind myself that Emma was trying, that she was doing everything she could to prove her commitment. But trust, once broken, is a fragile thing, and I found myself constantly questioning, doubting. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching TV, Emma reached over and took my hand. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant. She squeezed my hand gently, her eyes meeting mine. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I know I've hurt you, and I know it's going to take time to heal, but I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." I looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes, the regret. "I know you're trying, Emma," I replied, "and I appreciate that, I do. But I'm still hurting. I don't know how long it's going to take for me to get past this." She nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I'm willing to wait," she said, "as long as it takes." We continued with therapy, slowly working through our issues, trying to rebuild the connection that had once come so easily. Some days were better than others. There were moments when I felt a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe we could find our way back to each other. But there were also moments of doubt, of anger and pain that threatened to overwhelm me. One night, after a particularly difficult therapy session, I found myself lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Emma was asleep beside me, her breathing steady and calm. I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened, about all the lies and betrayals. I wondered if it was even possible to truly forgive, to truly move on. I got out of bed and went downstairs, needing some space to clear my head. I sat on the couch, staring out the window at the dark, quiet street. I thought about the life Emma and I had built together, the memories we had shared, the dreams we had once had for the future. It all felt so far away now, like a different life entirely. I didn't hear Emma come down the stairs until she was standing in the doorway. "Jason?" she said softly, her voice filled with concern. "Are you okay?" I turned to look at her, feeling a wave of emotion wash over me. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't know if I'm ever going to be okay again." She walked over and sat down beside me, her hand resting gently on my arm. "I'm here," she said quietly. "Whatever you need, I'm here." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We sat there in silence for a long time, the weight of everything between us heavy in the air. I wanted to believe that we could get through this, that we could find a way to heal. But I also knew that it was going to take time, patience, and a lot of hard work. As the weeks passed, we continued to make small steps toward rebuilding our relationship. We went on dates, tried to find new ways to connect, to rediscover the love that had once brought us together. But the shadow of Alicia and the affair hung over us, a constant reminder of what had been lost. One day during a therapy session, Dr. Harper suggested that we take a weekend away, just the two of us, to focus on each other and try to reconnect. I was hesitant at first, but Emma seemed eager, and I knew that if we were going to have any chance of making this work, we needed to take some risks. We booked a cabin in the mountains, a secluded spot away from the city, where we could have some privacy and a change of scenery. The drive up was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts. But when we arrived, there was a sense of calm that settled over us. The first day was awkward. We danced around each other, unsure of how to act, what to say. But as the day went on, we started to relax. We went for a hike, talked about things that didn't involve the affair or therapy. For a brief moment, it felt like we were just us again, two people who loved each other and wanted to be together. That night, as we sat by the fire, Emma turned to me, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. "Jason," she said softly, "do you think we can ever really move past this?" I looked at her, seeing the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I want to try. I want to try for us." She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "Me too," she whispered. "Me too." We sat there, holding each other in the quiet of the night, the fire crackling softly beside us. It wasn't a perfect moment, but it was a start, and for now that was all we could ask for. As we headed back to the cabin, I felt a sense of hope for the first time in a long while. Maybe we could find our way back to each other. Maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. Returning from our weekend away, Emma and I felt a cautious optimism. The time spent together had helped, if only a little. We managed to reconnect in ways we hadn't been able to at home, away from the distractions and reminders of everything that had gone wrong. But as we drove back into the city, the weight of reality settled back over us. I knew that whatever progress we made in the mountains would be tested now that we were back in the real world. The first week back was difficult. The lingering doubts and insecurities crept back into my mind. I wanted to trust Emma, to believe that she was committed to making things right. But every time I saw her checking her phone or stepping out for some air, the paranoia set in. What if she was reaching out to Alicia again? What if she wasn't ready to let go? The questions haunted me. One evening, while we were having dinner, Emma could sense my restlessness. "Jason," she said gently, putting down her fork, "I can see that you're still struggling with this, and I don't blame you. I know I've broken your trust, and it's not something that can be fixed overnight." I nodded, setting my fork down as well. "It's just hard, Emma. I want to believe you, to believe that we can move past this, but I still feel like there's a wall between us." Emma took a deep breath, her face reflecting the pain of the situation. "I understand. I feel it too. And I think maybe we need to confront what happened head on." I looked at her, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then continued. "I think we need to talk about Alicia, about what happened between us. We've been avoiding it, hoping it would just fade away, but I don't think that's going to work. Not if we want to truly move on." The idea of discussing Alicia was like a punch to the gut. I had tried to bury those memories, to focus on the future, not the past. But I knew Emma was right. Ignoring it wouldn't make it go away. If anything, it was like a shadow that loomed over us, growing larger the longer we avoided it. "Okay," I said finally, my voice barely a whisper. "Let's talk about it." We moved to the living room, the conversation feeling too heavy for the dinner table. Emma started, her voice quiet but steady. "Alicia and it started as a friendship. I didn't think much of it at first. We just clicked, you know? She was easy to talk to, and I felt understood in a way I hadn't felt in a long time." I listened, my heart pounding in my chest. "When did it turn into more?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice even. Emma looked down, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "A few months ago, we started spending more time together outside of work, and things just escalated. I didn't mean for it to happen, Jason. I wasn't looking for it. But it did, and I'm so sorry." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Why didn't you tell me when you first started feeling something for her? Why did you keep it a secret?" She shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "I was scared. I didn't know how to explain it to you. I didn't even understand it myself. And then, when things went further, I felt trapped. I knew I was doing something wrong, but I didn't know how to stop. I didn't want to hurt you." "But you did," I said, my voice cracking. "You hurt me more than I ever thought possible." Emma nodded, her tears falling freely now. "I know, and I hate myself for it. If I could take it all back, I would, but I can't. All I can do is try to make things right now." There was a long silence as we both sat there, lost in our thoughts. I could feel the anger, the pain bubbling up inside me, but I knew that lashing out wouldn't solve anything. We had come this far, and I owed it to myself, to us, to see this through. "What about Alicia?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you still have feelings for her?" Emma hesitated, then shook her head. "No, I don't. Not anymore. I think I was drawn to her because she represented something I was missing in myself. But I know now that she's not what I want. I want you, Jason. I want us." Her words were sincere, but I couldn't shake the feeling of doubt. "How can I believe that?" I asked, my voice filled with pain. "How can I trust that you're not just saying that because you feel guilty or because you don't want to lose what we have?" Emma reached out, taking my hand in hers. "I know it's hard to believe me right now," she said softly, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove it to you. I'll keep going to therapy. I'll keep working on myself. I just, I just need you to give me a chance." I looked at her, seeing the woman I had loved for so many years, the woman I still loved, despite everything. "I'm trying, Emma," I said, my voice breaking. "I really am. But it's going to take time. She nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. I know, and I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. We sat there for a long time, holding each other's hands, the weight of our conversation settling over us. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a step towards healing, towards finding a way forward. Over the next few weeks, we continued our efforts to rebuild our relationship. Therapy sessions became more productive, and we started to communicate more openly about our feelings, our fears, and our hopes for the future. It was hard, painful work, but it felt necessary. Each conversation was like peeling back a layer of hurt, exposing the raw wound underneath, but it was the only way to truly heal. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Emma turned to me, her expression thoughtful. Jason, I've been thinking, maybe it would help if we set some goals for ourselves. Things we want to achieve together as a couple. I looked at her, intrigued. What kind of goals? She smiled, a small but genuine smile. Things that remind us why we fell in love in the first place, like taking a trip to that beach we loved or cooking dinner together like we used to. Just small things to help us reconnect. I nodded, feeling a sense of warmth spread through me. I like that idea, I said. I think it could really help. We sat down that night and made a list of things we wanted to do together. Simple, everyday activities that had once brought us joy. It felt like a small, hopeful step towards rebuilding what we had lost. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself slowly beginning to trust Emma again. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt and fear, but I could see that she was committed to making things work. She was patient, understanding, and willing to face the pain she had caused. One day while we were out for a walk, Emma stopped and turned to me. Jason, she said, her voice filled with emotion, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for giving me a second chance, for believing that we could make it through this. I looked at her, feeling a wave of emotion wash over me. I believe in us, Emma, I said softly. I always have. And I think we're finally on the right path. She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. I think so too, she whispered. As we continued walking, hand in hand, I felt a sense of hope I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't perfect, and there was still a long road ahead. But for the first time, I truly believed that we could make it through this, together. As weeks turned into months, Emma and I continued to try to rebuild what was left of our marriage. We followed Dr. Harper's advice, setting goals, trying new things, and making a conscious effort to reconnect. There were moments that felt almost normal, moments where I could see the spark that had once drawn us together. But those moments were fleeting, overshadowed by the heavy cloud of what had happened. Despite our efforts, I could feel a distance between us that hadn't been there before. It was like a wall, invisible but impenetrable, standing between us. I could sense Emma trying to break through it, her every gesture, every word, an attempt to mend what had been broken. But no matter how hard we tried, it felt like we were just going through the motions, pretending to be okay when we weren't. One evening, after another tense dinner filled with forced smiles and awkward silences, I decided I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I needed to know where we truly stood. Emma, I said, breaking the silence, we need to talk. She looked up from her plate, her eyes weary. I know, she replied softly. I've been feeling it too. We moved to the living room, sitting across from each other, the weight of everything we had been avoiding now hanging in the air between us. I feel like we're stuck, I said, my voice heavy with emotion. Like we're trying so hard to make this work, but it's just not happening. Emma nodded, her expression pained. I've been feeling the same way, she admitted. I want to fix things, I really do, but it feels like something's missing, like we're not really connecting. I sighed, feeling a wave of sadness wash over me. I don't know if we can get back what we had, I confessed. I don't know if it's possible to move past this. Emma's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out, taking my hand. Jason, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to give up on us. But I'm starting to wonder if maybe we're trying to force something that's already broken. Her words cut through me like a knife, but I knew she was right. We had been trying so hard to hold on to the pieces of our marriage, to rebuild what had been shattered. but maybe some things were beyond repair. What are you saying? I asked quietly, dreading the answer. She looked down, her tears falling silently onto her lap. Maybe, maybe it's time to let go, she whispered. Maybe it's time to accept that we can't go back to the way things were. I felt a lump form in my throat, my heart breaking all over again. Are you saying you want a divorce? I asked, my voice trembling. Emma didn't answer right away, but when she looked up, I could see the pain and the resignation in her eyes. I don't want it, she said softly, but I think it might be what we need, for both of us. I nodded, my chest tightening with grief. I never thought we'd end up here, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Neither did I, she replied, her voice choked with emotion. But maybe this is the only way we can both move forward. The days that followed were a blur. We continued to live in the same house, going through the motions of daily life. But the decision hung over us like a dark cloud. We both knew what was coming, but neither of us wanted to be the one to take the final step. We continued to attend therapy sessions with Dr. Harper, trying to find some closure, some understanding of how we had ended up here. In one of our final sessions, Dr. Harper asked us a question that struck me to the core. Do you believe there's still love between you? She asked, her eyes searching ours. Emma and I looked at each other, and I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. I'll always love Emma, I said honestly. She was my best friend, my partner. But I don't think we're in love anymore. Not in the way we need to be to make this work. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. I feel the same way, she admitted. I care about Jason so much, but I don't think I'm in love with him anymore. Not in the way that would make a marriage work. Dr. Harper nodded, her expression understanding. Sometimes love changes, she said gently. It doesn't mean what you had wasn't real or that it didn't matter. It just means that it's time to let go and move on. After that session, Emma and I both knew it was time. We sat down together and had a long, difficult conversation about what the future would look like, how we would handle the logistics of the divorce, how we would separate our lives, our finances. It was painful, but there was a strange sense of relief in finally acknowledging the truth, in finally facing what we had both been avoiding for so long. The day we signed the divorce papers was one of the hardest days of my life. Emma and I went to the lawyer's office together, a somber silence hanging over us. As we sat across the table, pen in hand, I felt a flood of memories wash over me. Our wedding day, the years we had spent building a life together, the love we had once shared. I looked at Emma, her face pale but resolute. Are you sure about this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She nodded, her eyes filled with tears. Yes, she said softly. I think it's what we need. I took a deep breath and signed the papers, my hands shaking. Emma did the same, and just like that, it was over. Our marriage, our life together, reduced to a few signatures on a piece of paper. As we walked out of the lawyer's office, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for what we had lost, for the life we had built that was now coming to an end, but relief in knowing that maybe, just maybe, this was the right decision for both of us. We stood outside for a moment, the sun shining down on us, a stark contrast to the heaviness in my heart. I'm sorry, Emma said, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry for everything. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. Me too, I replied. But maybe this is the best thing for both of us. She gave me a small, sad smile. I hope you find happiness, Jason, she said softly. I really do. You too, I replied, my voice choked with emotion. You too. We stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked away, each of us heading in different directions, towards different futures. It was the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another. And as I walked away, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It wasn't the ending I had hoped for, but it was an ending nonetheless. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.